The autumn wind howled outside the aging townhouse, rattling the window panes like ghostly fingers tapping to be let in. Inside, the small upstairs room glowed with the soft light of a flickering desk lamp. Piles of handwritten notes and open textbooks covered the chipped wooden table. Mia Tran sat hunched over a thick volume of anatomy, her pen paused mid-sentence, lips moving silently as she recited muscle groups for the 100th time that week. Her scholarship interview was in 2 days, the one she'd worked toward for years. Winning it meant full tuition at the best medical school in the province. Losing it meant, well, working more double shifts at the bakery and praying for another chance that might never come. Her phone buzzed. At first, she ignored it, her eyes glued to the diagram of the human spine. But it buzzed again. And again. Finally, with a sigh, she reached for it. The screen flashed a familiar name, and Han. "Hello?" she answered, her voice low with fatigue. Mia. "It's me," came the voice on the other end, shaking with pain. I slipped near the stairs at the train station. My ankle. I can't stand. I just got back home. Mia sat up straighter, her study haze vanishing. "Are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" No, sweetheart. I can't go in for the night shift. If I miss another day, they'll replace me. Please. Mia. Could you take my shift tonight? Just this once. Just clean a few offices. Quiet night. You know the routine." Mia hesitated. Her eyes darted to the open textbook, the clock ticking down to her exam, the heavy feeling in her chest. She had no uniform. No badge. She didn't belong at the Sterling Tower, a gleaming 40-story corporate fortress in the city's financial district. Her aunt had cleaned the executive floors there for nearly a decade. Mia had only seen the building once, from a distance. "I know it's a lot to ask," Aunt Han whispered. "But I'm scared. I'm still on probation for switching shifts last month. Please, sweetheart." Mia closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. The familiar scent of lavender from her aunt's jacket, still hanging by the door, seemed to rise with her breath. "I'll do it," she said. "You will?" Her aunt gasped. "Oh, Mia. Thank you. Thank you. The uniform? In the hallway closet. My ID too, just swipe it at the side entrance. The staff door, you remember?" Mia nodded, already rising to her feet. "Rest. I'll take care of it." An hour later, Mia stood in the rain, squinting up at the monolithic Sterling Tower. Drenched in cold light and steel, the building looked more like a spaceship than an office. She tugged the oversized cleaning uniform tighter around her, her aunt's ID badge clipped loosely to the collar. Her backpack, containing only a phone, a water bottle, and a small container of homemade rice balls, felt heavier than it should have. The side door was marked with a discreet metal plate. "Authorized personnel only." Mia swallowed hard and swiped the badge. The door beeped and unlocked. She stepped inside. Everything changed. The air inside was crisp, infused with subtle citrus. The floors gleamed beneath soft, recessed lights. A bored-looking security supervisor glanced up from a clipboard and gestured. "Probation replacement? Floor 35 and 36 tonight. Executive levels. Quiet. Empty. Don't touch anything that doesn't need touching." Mia nodded, silent. He handed her a cart with neatly arranged supplies and waved her off. She rolled it toward the service elevator, each wheel squeaking slightly. Her heart thudded with every floor she passed. This wasn't just a job, it was a world she didn't belong in. But she wasn't here to belong. She was here to help. The 35th floor was eerily quiet. Unlike the industrial parts of the building her aunt usually described, this level was carpeted in deep gray with soft golden trim along the walls. The hallway lights were dimmed to a twilight glow, and framed digital art changed slowly along the corridor, abstract clouds, forests, cityscapes. Even the air felt richer here. Mia's task list was handwritten on a crumpled sticky note: 3 offices, 1 break room, 2 bathrooms. All routine. She entered the first room carefully. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the night skyline like a painting. Leather chairs, glass-topped desks, polished stone tiles. Every surface reflected something. She worked quietly, methodically. Empty trash, sanitized surfaces, vacuum where needed. Her aunt had taught her well. Always clean in a circle. Always check under the desk. Always straighten the chairs just so. Mia moved to the next office. Then the next. By the time she reached the executive break room, her anxiety had dulled to a calm hum. The room was empty except for a few discarded coffee cups. She wiped down the counter, replaced the supplies, and moved to the glass table to polish its surface. She was crouched near the bottom shelf when her walkie-talkie crackled unexpectedly. Staff needed urgently, top floor, executive lounge had unexpected guests. Quick turnaround required before morning. Any available cleaner respond. There was silence. Mia hesitated. Then pressed the button with a trembling hand. I can go. I'm on 35. I can take it. Copy that. Floor 40. Lounge and main suite. Use private lift near the east stairwell. 40th floor. Her pulse surged. She gathered her card and wheeled it toward the east lift. The private elevator gleamed gold and black like something out of a palace. She swiped the badge. It opened. The ride was silent, no music, just the hum of power. As the door slid open, Mia gasped. The 40th floor was nothing like the others. Instead of cubicles or offices, it opened into a massive reception room with hand-carved woodwork, warm lighting, and a private library behind glass walls. The executive suite stood at the far end, double mahogany doors engraved with an intricate emblem she didn't recognize. Mia pushed her cart down the hall. The lounge was empty, but the lights were on. The fireplace flickered low. The kitchen gleamed, untouched. She cleaned silently, afraid to breathe too loud. Finally, she entered the suite, room 4001, and her breath left her entirely. It wasn't an office. It was a miniature penthouse. Plush armchairs. A private study. A sunken tub in the marble bath. A fully stocked bar beside a built-in sound system. This wasn't just wealth. It was another universe. Mia moved through it reverently, cleaning as precisely as she could, trying not to touch more than necessary. She was almost done, kneeling by the edge of the fireplace, wiping ash from the marble, when the door behind her clicked open. She froze. A shadow fell across the carpet. And a voice, calm, low, and distinctly amused, broke the silence behind her. "Well," it said. "This is unexpected." Mia's hands froze on the edge of the fireplace. She hadn't even had time to process the voice before her heart jumped straight into her throat. Slowly, stiffly, she turned her head toward the door, and saw him. Tall. Impeccably dressed in a black suit, even at this hour. His tie was loosened slightly, revealing the first undone button of a crisp white shirt. His presence was composed but undeniable, the kind of person who was used to entering a room and making people stand straighter, speak quicker. He stepped inside, his expression unreadable. Sharp gray eyes swept across the room and landed on her. Mia scrambled to her feet, clutching the cleaning cloth like it might shield her. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't know someone was checking in tonight. The office called and said." "You're new?" He interrupted, not rudely, but with the kind of confidence that made it sound like a statement rather than a question. "Yes. I mean, I'm just covering for Lily." His voice softened just a bit, and a glimmer of recognition crossed his face. "Ah, yes. Hans niece, right? I've heard the name." Mia blinked. He knew her aunt? She nodded slowly, unsure of what else to say. The man walked further into the room, setting his phone on a side table with deliberate calm. He didn't sit, but circled the room with easy grace, like a panther pacing territory it owned. Strange, he mused aloud, not unkindly. Usually when the hotel arranges this sort of visit, there's more. Presentation. Visit? Mia repeated, confused. He stopped and looked at her, tilting his head just slightly. No script? No small talk? That's a refreshing change. "I'm just cleaning, sir," she said, the words tripping over her tongue. "I'm not. Anything else?" His brow lifted. A pause. Then his mouth curved into a smirk, not cruel, but amused. "Of course. My mistake. Still, I admire the commitment to character." Mia's stomach dropped. She took a step back, the soft carpet muting her movement. "I'm not acting." He blinked at that. "You're serious?" "I'm just covering for my aunt," she said, firmer now. She twisted her ankle, and if she missed the shift, she could have lost her job. "I'm not on the schedule." "I know that. But I was just trying to help her." The smirk faded. Now his expression turned into something else, confusion, maybe discomfort. "You thought she swallowed, her cheeks burning. "You thought I was arranged for you?" He didn't answer. Mia stared at him, heart pounding, every cell in her body screaming to flee, but something deeper, something wounded, held her still. "Is that how you see people like me?" she asked softly. "A girl in a cheap uniform who enters your room quietly, she must be here for your entertainment?" He opened his mouth, but she raised a hand. "Don't. I don't want an excuse." Her voice was trembling now, but not weak. People like you don't even see us, she continued, each word sharper than the last. You think we're furniture. Background noise. Replaceable. But my aunt cleans your floors, wipes your sinks, picks up your trash. And she does it with dignity. I came here tonight to protect that. To protect her. She didn't know when the tears started. Just that they were there, blurring her vision, clouding the gold-trimmed room until it looked like a watercolor dream melting into ruin. I should go. She grabbed her card and turned toward the door, but her fingers shook so badly, she barely managed to pull it open. Wait, he said, stepping forward. She didn't. As she moved, her foot caught the edge of the cart. Her aunt's ID badge, her only link to this place, slipped free and fell to the floor. She didn't notice. But he did. Alexander Lin stood frozen in the middle of the suite long after the girl disappeared down the hallway. He picked up the badge and turned it over in his hand. Lily Tran. His jaw tightened. He'd known Lily from her years of quiet service, always early, always polite. She once brought him ginger tea when he had a cold during a fiscal review meeting. It had come in a paper cup with her initials written on the lid. He still remembered that small kindness. And the girl. She wasn't Lily. She wasn't even supposed to be here. But she was real. Real in a way he hadn't seen in years. Real like the trembling in her voice, the way she held herself just long enough not to break until she left. He sat down heavily on the edge of the velvet armchair, ID still in hand. Alexander Lin had built his name through strategy and vision. He was the architect of Lin Tech, one of the fastest growing global infrastructure firms in Asia. His words were quoted in finance magazines. His face had graced the covers of Forbes and Time. He'd walked red carpets with dignitaries, dined in private chambers of monarchs. But tonight, in the span of 5 minutes, he had looked a stranger in the eye and reduced her to something unworthy. And that stranger had more dignity in her refusal than he had in his entire career. He rose, crossed the room, and picked up his phone. Marcus, he said when his assistant answered. I need a full report. Tonight's staff list, security footage from the executive suite hallway, and I want background on Lily Tran. I need to know who was on shift for her. Now? Now, Alexander said, his voice cold. But not with anger. With regret. With something that tasted bitter and unfamiliar. Down on the street, Mia walked through the rain without her umbrella. Her hair clung to her cheeks, and her borrowed shoes soaked through. Her mind screamed at her, reliving the humiliation, the assumptions, the insult. She could barely breathe. She didn't cry until she reached the bus stop. And when she did, she cried like someone who had kept too much in for too long. Not just for what happened in that suite, but for everything. For being tired. For being invisible. For caring so much that it hurt. She had thought the night couldn't get worse. But it was only the beginning. Because what happened in that room would change her life in ways she never could have imagined. The early morning light broke slowly over the city skyline, casting a hazy glow through the towering windows of Sterling Tower. Inside the building, silence clung to the executive floor, broken only by the quiet hum of machinery and the occasional shuffle of cleaning staff preparing for a new day. But in the security office on the basement level, Alexander Lin sat wide awake, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, jaw tight as the grainy footage of the previous night played before him. He had watched it 4 times already. The moment the girl entered the suite. How she worked quickly, methodically. How she adjusted the sofa cushions twice to make sure they were aligned. How she stepped back and checked every angle like a surgeon prepping a table. Not once did she glance at the mirror. Not once did she check her reflection. There was no performance. Only purpose. The head of security stood quietly nearby, unsure of what to say. Alexander finally spoke, voice low and controlled. Facial recognition, do we have a match? Not in the active staff registry, the guard said. But she used Lily Tran's badge. I traced her emergency contact, Emma Tran. Registered as a dependent. He handed over a file. Paper clipped. Clean. Contained. Alexander took it. Emma Tran. 22. Medical student at Vin University. Final year. Works part-time at a campus bookstore and volunteers at a city-run clinic. Lives with her aunt, Lily, in an older apartment block on the east side. No infractions. No history. No indication of anything suspicious. Except last night. He closed the folder slowly and stared at the name. Emma. He remembered now, Lily once mentioned Denise. Smarter than all of us combined, she'd said with a proud grin, pouring tea into a chipped mug. Going to wear a white coat one day. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. Now, it felt like a gaping wound in the memory. Alexander stood abruptly. Clear my morning, he told his assistant, and arranged transportation to the address on file. The east side of the city was different. Gone were the sleek facades of glass and marble. Here, the streets smelled of cooking oil and rusted metal. Buildings leaned slightly, like tired men resting on one another's shoulders. Faded clothes flapped on thin wires between rooftops. Alexander climbed the narrow staircase of an aging apartment block. The door he stopped at was painted green once, but most of the color had chipped away. He knocked twice. It creaked open after a moment, revealing a woman with a soft face and a bandaged foot propped on a stoolie. "Mr. Lin," she said, blinking in disbelief. You're from the tower?" "Yes," he said with a slight bow. "Lily Tran, correct?" She nodded, tightening her robe. I wasn't expecting." She gestured for him to enter. "Forgive the mess." The apartment was modest, but neat. A worn couch stood beside a narrow bookcase filled with cookbooks and medical texts. On the table, a half-eaten bowl of rice porridge sat beside a stack of flashcards, each labeled with a disease or treatment. Alexander's eyes caught a photograph in a wooden frame. A younger Emma, smiling, arms wrapped around her aunt's shoulders. They stood in front of a small graduation banner taped to the wall. He looked back at Lily. "She didn't tell you what happened?" he asked gently. Lily's face fell. "She came home crying," she said. "Didn't say much, only that she'd done something wrong. That she made a mistake. I feared she might have broken something in the suite." "She didn't," Alexander said. "She did everything right. And I was the one who misjudged her." Lily's eyes softened. "She was only trying to help me. She begged me not to tell anyone. Said if the hotel found out, they'd fire me." "I understand," Alexander said quietly. He sat across from Lily, the silence stretching. "She's a good girl," Lily whispered, as if trying to explain her. "Works herself to exhaustion. She could have applied abroad, you know. But she stayed, to take care of me." Alexander looked at the flashcards again. His chest ached in a way he didn't expect. "She's still at school?" he asked. Lily nodded. "At the campus clinic. Room 213, usually." Later that day, the university campus bustled with the energy of students, bikes, and loud conversation. Alexander stood out, too tall, too still, dressed in muted designer clothing among the messily dressed crowds. The clinic was small but well run. Through the glass, he saw her before she saw him. Emma stood at the supply shelf, sorting medicine bottles, her hair tied in a loose bun. She wore a white coat over a soft blue blouse, slightly wrinkled, clearly worn from a long day. Her movements were methodical, focused. He waited until she looked up. Her body froze. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, softly, she stepped into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind her. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry. But it wasn't welcoming either. "I came to apologize," he said. "Not for what you did. But for what I assumed." She stared at him, searching his face. Her eyes were rimmed red from exhaustion. "You thought I was something I'm not." "I know," he said. "And I hate that I did." Emma crossed her arms, hugging herself like armor. "It's not just about me. It's about all of us. The invisible people. The ones who bring food, clean bathrooms, hold open doors. We're part of your world, even if we're not in your line of sight." Alexander lowered his gaze. "I forgot that. Somewhere along the way. I lost sight." Emma looked away. "You didn't just humiliate me. You made me feel small. Like I didn't matter." "You do," he said firmly. "You mattered that night, and you matter now." He had pulled something from his coat pocket and held it out. A small black envelope, embossed with gold. Emma didn't take it. "What is this?" "A formal invitation. To apply for a new scholarship. Through the Lin Foundation. For students like you, who show strength beyond grades." Quiet strength. Emma stared at it, unmoving. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he added. "I just want to do one right thing. You reminded me that success isn't about what you have, but who you see." The silence between them shifted. Less sharp. Less strained. Emma slowly took the envelope, her fingers brushing his. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I ask." He nodded, turned to go, then paused. "Emma," he said, softly. "You were never invisible. I was just blind." Then he walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway, still stunned, still unsure, but no longer unseen. Emma didn't open the black envelope right away. She tucked it into her bag, beneath her notebooks and half-finished clinic forms, and tried to forget it was there. But that night, As the city lights flickered outside her bedroom window and her aunt slept soundly in the next room, she found herself holding it. Her fingers traced the embossed seal before she gently peeled it open. Inside was a simple letter from the Lynn Foundation, offering not just a scholarship, but an opportunity, full tuition coverage, housing assistance, and the chance to participate in international medical research programs. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. But even then, her heart hesitated. It wasn't about pride. It was fear. Fear of being a symbol. Fear of being pitied. Fear that his regret had strings. The next day, she returned to the cafe near campus, a quiet spot with chipped cups and strong coffee, hoping for peace. When she pushed the door open, she nearly turned around and left again. Alexander was already there. In a dark sweater and simple slacks, he looked almost ordinary. No assistants. No security. Just him, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of him, one hand around a small notebook, the other resting nervously on the edge of the table. He stood when he saw her. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I almost didn't," she replied honestly, sliding into the seat across from him. They sat in silence for a moment. The cafe buzzed around them, baristas calling names, students typing loudly at mismatched tables, but their little corner felt oddly still. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her voice calm but measured. "For the scholarship. It's generous." "It's not charity," Alexander replied. "It's recognition. You earned it. That night, you did something most people wouldn't have." Emma glanced at him, brows slightly raised. "I cleaned a room." "No," he said gently. "You showed up when it was inconvenient. You took responsibility for someone else, without expecting anything in return. You did your job with dignity, even when someone treated you like you didn't deserve it." She looked away, hiding the flicker of emotion in her eyes. He didn't press her. "I've been trying to unlearn a lot lately," he continued. "I've spent years thinking in numbers. Value, efficiency, outcomes. But people aren't spreadsheets. And that night, I saw how blind I'd become." Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she asked softly, "Why are you really doing this?" He paused, then said, "Because I want to be someone better than the man you met that night." Not the perfect answer, but honest. Emma nodded slowly. "I don't know what this is," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Us. Talking like this. Sitting here. It doesn't feel real." "I don't either," he admitted. "But I'd like to find out." A tentative smile tugged at her lips. "I don't trust easily," she warned. "I don't blame you," he said. "I learn it. One conversation at a time." And in that tiny cafe, with mismatched mugs and rain streaking the windows, something quiet and powerful began to take shape between them, not forced, not defined, just the first plank in a fragile bridge neither of them expected, but both were willing to cross. Together. A full year had passed since the night Emma had stepped into the executive suite of Sterling Tower wearing her aunt's faded uniform, hoping to leave unnoticed. She hadn't. And neither had Alexander Lynn. The year that followed wasn't marked by grand declarations or whirlwind transformations. Instead, it unfolded like quiet waves reshaping the shoreline, slow, persistent, honest. Emma earned the Lynn Foundation scholarship and used it not only to finish medical school, but to begin a research project on urban healthcare access, working with underserved neighborhoods. The funding gave her time, but she never stopped working. She still volunteered at the campus clinic, still walked her aunt to appointments, still folded laundry while listening to medical podcasts. Alexander visited once a month, at first. Then more. Never showing up with security, never making a scene. Just a quiet presence. Sometimes he brought documents to review. Other times, it was tea from her favorite card or a printout of a study she mentioned in passing. They learned each other in pieces. He learned how she hummed under her breath when she was focused. That she hated coffee but loved the smell. That she had an odd fondness for collecting tiny succulents, each with a name. She learned that he liked silence, not because he was cold, but because it helped him think. That he carried a small coin in his pocket, a gift from his late father. That he sometimes went entire days without talking to anyone unless he made himself. He didn't try to change her life. He just showed up. And slowly, so did she. Their relationship never followed a script. There was no viral photo, no dramatic first kiss in the rain. But there were quiet walks after long days, takeout containers shared on park benches, messages exchanged at midnight before her rounds and after his meetings. Emma taught him about listening. About sitting in discomfort without fixing it. She took him to a free clinic in the outskirts of the city, where he watched her kneel beside a coughing boy, using broken dialect and gentle hands to ease fear and fever. He was moved in ways he never expected. He began redirecting portions of the Lynn Foundation's budget to mental health initiatives and rural outreach programs. He formed a new partnership with Emma's university to offer scholarships and internships to students from working-class families. Every proposal had her fingerprints on it, her insight, her values. They never labeled what they were building. But it was real. One spring evening, they stood together outside the newly opened Lynn Community Health Center, a sleek but welcoming building tucked between high-rises and train lines. It wasn't the kind of place that made headlines, but Emma's eyes shone as she toured the halls. Each room was designed with care, low seating for elderly patients, colorful walls for children, consultation spaces with natural light. "This is yours," Alexander said softly beside her. Emma shook her head. "It's ours. You made it happen." He looked at her then, with a gaze that had changed over the months. No longer guarded. No longer sharp. But open, steady. "Do you remember what you said that night?" he asked. "When I assumed the worst." She nodded, a faint ache still lingering. "I told you I wasn't something for sale." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in a cloth. She unwrapped it slowly. It was her aunt's ID badge, cleaned, repaired, and framed in a delicate silver border. The name still read Lily Tran, but beneath it was engraved, "For the night everything changed." Emma's breath caught. "I thought it was lost," she whispered. "So did I," he replied. "But I kept it. I didn't know why at the time. Now I do." Tears welled in her eyes. "This badge," he said, "was the first time I saw you. Not just as a woman or a student, but as someone who walks into storms for others." She couldn't speak. So he continued. "I've negotiated with billionaires. Reshaped skylines. But this, what we've built together, it's the only thing that feels permanent. The only thing that feels real." Emma finally found her voice, quiet and trembling. "You've changed." He nodded. "You changed me." Then, gently, he reached for her hand. She let him. In the warm evening light, amidst the laughter of neighborhood children playing by the clinic's garden, they stood still. Not perfect, but whole. Months later, the Lynn Foundation hosted its annual Impact Gala, this time not in the opulent ballroom of a skyscraper, but in the central atrium of the new community clinic. Emma stood backstage, wearing a simple navy dress, her hair half-pinned and her heart racing. She didn't like crowds. Never had. But tonight wasn't about lights or cameras. It was about stories. About people like her aunt. Like the boy from the free clinic. Like the volunteers who folded pamphlets and served tea in waiting rooms. Alexander stood at the podium, wearing a gray suit with no tie. He looked over the audience with quiet calm. "I used to measure success by numbers," he said. "Now, I measure it by faces." He paused. "There was a time I thought efficiency meant value. That profit justified everything. But one night, someone walked into my life, not with credentials, not with a pitch, but with kindness. And she showed me that the smallest acts can cause the greatest shifts." He looked toward Emma, his voice softer. "Her name is Emma Tran. She is a doctor, a daughter, a relentless force of good. And everything we've done since then has been guided by her strength." The crowd applauded. But Emma barely heard it. Her eyes were locked on his. Later that evening, long after the guests had left and the catering crew packed up, Alexander and Emma sat on the clinic's front steps, sipping leftover tea from paper cups. "You never said what changed your mind," she murmured. "About what?" "About showing up that morning. About tracking me down." Alexander turned to her, smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Because for the first time in my life," he said, "I realized that someone else's story mattered more than my comfort." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. And under the soft glow of the clinic's sign, they sat quietly, not planning, not rushing, just breathing together. Because what they had built wasn't built on power or apology. It was built on presence. And love that came not in noise, but in choice. Every day. Again and again.